What's up, Broncos country? Welcome back inside the UC Health Training Center for another episode of Broncos Now. Team reporter and host Sydney Jones here. And coming up on today's episode, we'll hear from head coach Nathaniel Hackett as he gives the final injury report ahead of the Broncos' Week 11 matchup versus the Raiders. Plus, Broncos lead writer Aric DiLalla joins the show for a game preview. All that and more on tonight's episode. The Broncos are back at Empower Field at Mile High this Sunday as they're set to face the Las Vegas Raiders. It's been nearly a month since the team has played at home, and head coach Nathaniel Hackett said he's excited to get back out there.
Yeah, it's been a long month. It has. To think that it has been that long since we've been at home is unbelievable. And we got the best fans in the world, and very excited for them to get out there for Raider Week.
Coach Hackett also gave an update today on the team's injuries. So let's take a look at this week's injury report. Coach Hackett ruled out inside linebacker Jonas Griffith, wide receiver Jerry Jeudy, tight end and fullback Andrew Beck, cornerback K'Wan Williams, and wide receiver KJ Hamler. An outside linebacker, Baron Browning, offensive lineman Tom Compton, offensive lineman Cam Fleming, guard Graham Glasgow, and wide receiver Kendall Hinton are all listed as questionable for Sunday's game. Coach Hackett discussed the challenge that comes with trying to game plan when the team has this many injuries.
It makes you have to change a lot of things up. Especially when it happens in game, those are things you have to make, just try to figure out as many different ways, whether you have to get out of personnels, get other people up to speed in certain personnels. If it happens during the week, you can adjust a little bit earlier, like what happened with KJ. But during the game, it's a little bit different. But that's part of the game. Changes the norm. Things happen. You have to be ready for that as a coach at all times.
Coach Hackett was also asked why the Broncos have suffered so many injuries this season.
Yes, it's unbelievably unfortunate. We've got great people here. We've got the strength staff, the training room, everybody, and we're evaluating everything. We're looking at it, but those guys work, and we've all looked into what we can do, how we can prevent things. We obviously, when things happen out on the field, you can't prevent those, but we're looking at it all. We have them do so many different things, from hydration tests to I could go on a sleep monitoring, asking them survey as much as we can, and sometimes things happen, and for whatever reason, it's happened a lot this year, and it's unfortunate, but it gives other guys opportunities to play.
And we're back inside the locker room following practice today and caught up with inside linebacker Alex Singleton and defensive end Dre'Mont Jones. Singleton discussed what it's going to mean to be back at home this Sunday.
Yeah, I feel like we haven't played here at all this year. It's huge to win at home. We want our fans, this is a loud stadium. I thought Philly was loud. It's a little louder here. And so to have them on our side, it makes it difficult for offenses. And so if we can, use that to our advantage, I think it'll be huge against the Raiders this weekend.
And Dre'Mont Jones discusses the challenge that Raiders running back Josh Jacobs poses.
His shiftiness. He can be a different style back. He can be a one-cut back, or he can just dance around the backfield and make you miss. And I think he does an excellent job at breaking tackles. I think he's ranked 5th overall for missed tackles. So you got to make sure we're on our P's and Q's in that area.
Now joining me here inside the Broncos podcast studio is Broncos lead writer Aric DiLalla. Aric, appreciate you joining me today. Happy Friday.
Thanks, Sid. You too.
Yep. Aric, we just looked at today's injury report. Gosh, this team cannot catch a break with the injuries. What are your concerns heading into Sunday's game?
Yeah, long injury segment, huh?
Yeah. Very long injury segment.
There's concerns, of course. I think first and foremost on the offensive side of the football, you don't have Jerry Jeudy, you don't have KJ Hamler. Guys, of course, who have previously been ruled out. Garrett Bowles is gone, Lloyd Cushenberry is gone, Billy Turner's gone.
Right.
Tim, Javonte Williams, and Andrew Beck. These guys have just been ruled out left and right. It'd be nice, I think, first of all, to get some of these guys back who, when Jerry can come back, they're hopeful he can play against Carolina, it sounds like. Maybe Andrew Beck comes back, KJ Hamler. But I think, so that's part of it. But also, you've got to stop losing guys in the middle of games, especially early in games, because Nathaniel Hackett said it. There's one thing when you have to change your game plan on a Thursday because KJ Hamler gets hurt in practice. It's another thing when Jerry Jeudy goes down on the first play of the game and all of a sudden everything that you thought you were going to do is out the window and you've got to change, whatever plays you were going to run, or you've got to put other guys in those spots. That makes it really tricky. So hopefully the Broncos can catch a break there and not lose someone early in this game. And then they need someone like a Kendall Hinton. He's questionable, of course, with a shoulder, but was limited on Friday. I think there's a decent chance he's able to go. So you need him to step up. And then I don't know if it's Jalen Virgil, Brandon Johnson, but it's kind of Cortland Sutton and then a bunch of guys who have not proven themselves at the wide receiver position. So they got to find a way there. You hope you can get some offensive linemen back and get some better protection. And then even on the defensive side of the ball, Sydney, which is, kind of been able to survive some of these injuries.
Right.
You've now got an inside linebacker out in Jonas Griffith, K'Wan Williams. I think he's playing as well as anybody who's not Pat Surtain on the defensive side of the ball.
Right.
He's now out. It's it's piled up a long time ago, but it's continuing. And the Broncos got to find a way to get a win against an equally banged up Raiders team.
Yeah. Well, Aric, looking at the offensive line specifically, Russ was sacked 6 times last Sunday in Nashville. It took 18 hits overall on Sunday. We, heard from Coach Hackett earlier. He said that Cam Fleming, Tom Compton, Graham Glasgow, they're all questionable for Sunday's game. But what are you hoping, like some of those younger guys that we saw step up on Sunday, how are you hoping they may be improved with a full week of practice now heading into this weekend's game?
Yeah, again, I think when you don't have to make in-game adjustments or in-game, just kind of change things around, that's helpful, of course. It'd be nice if Graham Glasgow could play, especially at center. I think that was, and it's nothing against Luke Wattenberg, who I think is a promising young player, but that's a tough spot to be thrown in at. And I do think that was kind of a turning point. You saw the Broncos offensive line struggle after that. And it's not just a physical thing. It's also assignment football. When they're bringing pressure, do you know who you're supposed to pick up, who the guy next to you is supposed to pick up? So that's tough. Broncos, of course, need to get the ball out a little bit quicker. I think we know that. But Russell Wilson is trying to make plays. And so there's got to be this kind of balance, of course, between the short, quick plays, the ones down the field that can help you score in chunks, because we've seen, Sydney, if the Broncos try to go 12 plays in a drive or 15 plays in a drive, they're getting penalties or they're making mistakes. And so Nathaniel Hackett talked about it. Hey, let's try and see if we can score quickly in these big chunk plays. The offensive line has to hold up in order for that to happen. So you'd like to see a mix, I think, of that short game, that quick game, and then, of course, timing your shots maybe a little bit better. But, again, you can't let Russell Wilson take 18 hits, because for where this season is right now, you still have a slight chance to turn things around, or at least to build momentum moving forward. Without Russ, that goes away. So you've got to keep him healthy. You've got to keep him upright and give him a chance to deliver the ball.
For sure. Aric, we've seen week in and week out, this passing game not able to get into a rhythm. The run game hasn't been consistent really either. I want to talk about the run game specifically, though. What do you think it is? Why do you think they aren't able to get this run game going? And what do you think maybe is the key to that? And overall, how important is it for the run game to get going for this offense to be successful?
Yeah, I don't think it's one thing, unfortunately. I think obviously having different guys in and out on the offensive line doesn't help. You're missing some of your more talented run blockers. From a schematic standpoint, we heard Tom Compton say the other day, this takes some time to get going. It takes some time to figure it out.
Yeah.
The 49ers, the Falcons, even the Packers, though they had team success, all of those teams, when they implemented this system, it took some time to get that outside zone scheme going. And then, of course, the running back talent, Latavius Murray, he's been a nice addition, but he's kind of up there in his career. Melvin Gordon has been good at times, but has had the fumbling issue as well. You lost Javonte Williams, who's your best running back. And Justin Outen said it. There's just not a hot hand right now. None of these guys are really clicking the way you would hope for them to click. But you're right. The running game has to get going. It's critical in terms of setting up the play action, which we saw Russ be successful with a little bit earlier in the season. It helps make these corners and linebackers come up closer to the line so that there is some more space for that passing game.
Yeah.
And it takes pressure off your offensive line in terms of pass blocking. I think it's easier to get downhill and go at these guys, attack them, wear the defense down. So there's so many reasons why the run game is important. And you just hope that it starts to click. Maybe if Tom Compton and Graham Glasgow and Cam Fleming get back in there, you're able to get a little bit more consistency or success.
Yeah.
But the Broncos have to figure something out, because it is tough when you're dropping back to pass 40 times a game, and you're counting on Russ to be the guy to essentially decide, are we going to be good on offense or not?
Yeah, definitely. Well, Aric, I think, looking at this matchup, undoubtedly the matchup to watch this week is going to be round 2 of Pat Surtain versus Davante Adams. Two of the best at their respective positions here. What did you like about Pat's performance, the first time these teams met in week 4 that you really hope to see him continue on Sunday here?
Yeah, I mean, he's physical. He's not afraid to press you at the line. He didn't give up a lot against Davante Adams.
Yeah.
4 receptions, I think, either 36 yards, 50 yards, depending on which of these stats websites you look at. But he was really good, and he challenged him. And the Raiders were kind of the one team that weren't afraid to go after Pat Surtain, so it made it fun to watch. I mean, he got his chance to get these pass breakups. He had one in the end zone, one in another critical situation. So he played up to that level. But I liked what Nathaniel Hackett said when he said they're not afraid to test him, and Pat's not afraid to be tested.
Right.
So it will be a fun matchup. And there is no, Hunter Renfrow didn't play the first time the Broncos played. He's out again.
Yep.
Darren Waller did play that week. He's out. So it might be the Raiders trying to, especially if the defense can stop Josh Jacobs, it might be Derek Carr trying to force feed Davante Adams. He, of course, is questionable. He's been limited all week with an abdomen injury. So, I mean, I would think he would play, but we'll have to see if he's even active for this game, which would hurt the Raiders even more than they're already hurting. But, yeah, I do have a feeling you're going to see Pat Surtain and Davante Adams go at each other again. And, listen, the way Pat Surtain's playing right now, I like his chances against anybody.
Yep, I agree. You mentioned Raiders running back Josh Jacobs. As we know, he always plays so well against the Broncos. Looking back at that first meeting, he rushed for 144 yards, 2 touchdowns. Coming off a game in which this Broncos defense held, Derrick Henry, arguably the best running back in the league, to just 53 yards. You think maybe we can expect them to be able to contain Josh Jacobs a little bit more this week?
Yeah, I hope so. And yeah, it's interesting. Josh Jacobs, I think if you asked a Raiders fan, they'd say, he hasn't really played up to his potential since being a first-round pick. But when he plays the Broncos, he looks like a Hall of Famer. I mean, 100%. He's just really good every time. Hopefully, the way the first game went, the Broncos are geared up and fired up to stop him this time around. You've got to go through blocks the same way you did against Tennessee. You can't dance around. You've got to put multiple guys on him near the line of scrimmage. And I think setting a tone early helps. If you remember back to that Week 4 game, they marched down the field very quickly. I believe it was their second drive of the game that they went down and scored a touchdown on a long extended drive that featured a lot of Josh Jacobs. You can set the tone early like they did against the Titans that you're not going to get the run game going against us. I think that goes a long way. It makes teams hesitant to run the football. Maybe Josh Jacobs starts to press a little bit, tries to do too much. That helps you out, of course. But what you can't do is let the same thing happen where the Raiders come out and on their first drive, they power their way down the field. Or, even more important, if it's a close game, late in the game, you've got to be able to find a way to get him down and get the ball back to your offense. So I'm sure that's a priority this week because if you can stop Josh Jacobs and then Pat Surtain can handle Davante Adams, I mean,
they got nothing else going.
Yeah, I mean, dare somebody. Everyone in this league is talented, but dare somebody else to beat you. Stop Josh Jacobs. Let Pat Surtain do his thing against Davante Adams and say, if you can beat us another way, okay. But the way this defense is playing, I think they've got a really good shot if they can do those two things.
Absolutely. Aric, we talked about this a little bit, earlier in the week, but what would a win you think really mean for this Broncos team? Obviously, the playoffs are pretty much out of the picture here. So, I mean, maybe just for the morale of this team, what would a win mean on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I do want to say from a playoff standpoint, you don't want to talk about it too much now because you're 3-6.
Right.
But until you get that 7th, 8th, 9th loss, you're really still in it. And the way the AFC is shaping up, 9-8 could very well get you into the playoffs. And so I don't want to say, the playoffs are out of the question, but I do think you're right that for right now, that shouldn't be the main goal. It's just you've got to get a win. You've got to get back, on the right track. You've got to start a streak. And, maybe we can look up in a couple of weeks. And if you're 5-6 or 6-6, maybe now you can start talking about that. But I do think it sets a tone in the division. This Raiders team has beaten you 5 games in a row. The Chiefs, of course, I think that's up to 13 now. I believe 11 of 12 in the division. The Broncos have lost, I think, 15 of 20. I mean, the streaks are they're not good. And so if you can, over the rest of this season, set the tone that, hey, we're going to beat the Raiders at home. We're going to beat the Chargers when they come here at home. We're going to end this against the Chiefs. you end up starting something where going into 2023 and even setting yourself up for success well in 2022 to end this season, you set a standard of we're going to be better in this division. We're going to compete. We're going to be, the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Raiders, they can't look past this Broncos team on the schedule.
Yeah.
And listen, Sydney, if you can win 3 more division games, you beat the Panthers on the road, you're able to knock off a Cardinals team that struggled at home.
Yeah,
Maybe you can get the Rams on the road.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at that, all of a sudden you look up and, hey, that is 8, 9, 10 wins. It's a way to get there. And so
It's true. I like the optimism, Aric.
yeah, I mean, again, you've got to do this, and it's silly to talk about being 9 and 8 right now, but I do think
It's a
people should
possibility.
understand that you've only got 6 losses. You can probably afford 2 more and potentially still make the playoffs. And so let's still stack some wins here and see where we are in a few weeks, as opposed to just saying this is over. But you're right, to get a win against the Raiders, I think from a rivalry standpoint, from a playoff odds standpoint, from a morale standpoint, all of that would be really great.
All right, well, last one, Aric. What's your game prediction?
Yeah, I said I think it's going to be close again. These always are against the Raiders, but I do think the Broncos find a way to get it done. Man, they've had some games here where it feels like they really should have gotten these wins. And even last week, you see them play great against a Tennessee team that goes to Green Bay, gets I think a 10-point win, is one of the better teams in the AFC. So if I'm a Broncos player, I look at that and say, it's a missed opportunity, but it's also a sign of how good we are. And so, I think the last one in Las Vegas, you let it get away. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think 21-20, the Broncos find a way to get it done.
All right, I like it. I hope you're right, Aric.
I hope so, too.
Appreciate your time and your insight always.
You got it.
Well, that'll do it for today's episode of Broncos Now. Broncos Country, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope to see you all at Empower Field at a Mile High this Sunday. Don't forget, kickoff is at 2:05 p.m. Mountain Time. If not, I will meet you right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube on Monday following the game for another episode.